We need to talk about self-sabotage. It's coming up a lot, understandably, when I talk to people about health and weight loss and things like that. But I need you to understand what it really is and why this keeps happening and what you can do about it. So I want to explain some things. But I have to start with brain science. I'm going to breeze through some brain science because there's no way for you to understand self-sabotage without understanding how your brain works. We're only at the mercy of a brain, right? Like all of our behaviors are rooted there. So we have to understand that first, okay? Brain science 101. Your brain doesn't know the difference between stressors, and it also doesn't know the difference between stress relief. So, stress is cortisol. That's a hormone. Every time something stresses you out, whether it's a lion, a tiger, or a bear chasing you in the forest, or it's a red light when you're running late to work, it's your fiance pissing you off, or it's your dog is sick, whatever. Any of your modern day stressors are to your brain the same as any acute emergency. So all stress is the same. All cortisol is cortisol is cortisol. This matters because if you're in fight or flight, aka your stress response, to save your life when a lion is coming after you, then it's great. It saves your life. That's the reason that we have stress to begin with. It's a survival mechanism. Your brain doesn't know, though, that now it's your everyday life. Every time your phone dings, every time you go on Instagram, all of these things are stressors. The problem is that our brain doesn't know the difference. So that's stress. On the other side of things are your happy chemicals. There's dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. These are the things that bring your stress down because they make you feel good. Your brain doesn't know the difference between stress relief the way it doesn't know the difference between stress. So if your stress relief and ultimately your safety, because, okay, if you're in fight or flight and you're stressed out, you're in danger. If you are finding stress relief, you're telling your brain that you're safe. So it ultimately comes down to danger and safety, not just stress and stress relief. The reason this matters is because if your happy chemicals, if your stress relief, if your sense of safety in an animalistic evolutionary sense comes from, let's say, a chocolate bar or a cookie or a bag of chips, then your brain is designed and wired to use that as safety. Not necessarily for calories, not necessarily for sugar. You're using it for safety because you're designed that way. Let me explain. Every single time you eat food, any kind of food, 2 of the 4 happy chemicals are released, dopamine and serotonin. Okay, so we're wired as human beings to survive on food, which is why it automatically makes us feel happy and rewarded and positive when we eat it. It's the same reason sex feels good, because we need it to survive. We reproduce. If you remove dopamine receptors from the brains of mice, they die from starvation right next to food without the motivation to eat it. So we are designed to be emotional eaters. We're actually designed by our very nature to seek food as a source of serotonin and safety when we're feeling stressed out. So there's nothing pathological about that, okay? So we have to understand all of that first before we can dive into self-sabotage. So on some level, what happens is, so the problem is not emotional eating. The problem is emotional eating as the only way for coping with emotion. And the problem is also being chronically stressed out without ways of bringing your safety without bringing the feeling of safety into your life and without bringing happy chemicals and stress relief into your life. If you are stressed all the time and the only coping mechanism you have is food and eating, then you're in trouble. But at the very root of it, emotional eating is not a bad thing, and there's nothing wrong with you. There would actually be something wrong if you didn't feel that way around food. So, having said that, when it comes to self-sabotage, especially when it comes to weight loss, there are 2 things that I think need to be addressed. One is, if you're in a place where eating and food is your source of safety and survival, and it always has been, because a lot of the people that I work with have been struggling with this forever, as far as they can remember. if that is your source of safety, and again, not consciously, like you know that you're safe. You're sitting in your bed eating a bowl of ice cream. You know you're safe. You consciously, your prefrontal cortex is aware of that. Your amygdala, your animal brain is not. So if you're feeling really stressed out and your brain is designed to think that a bowl of ice cream is going to get you to safety, and if this has worked in the past, you have your hippocampus in your brain that stores memories that says it worked, do it again. So if any of that has ever happened and it brought you to a better mood, it made you feel better immediately, then your brain is telling you to do something that is a survival skill. Get the bowl of ice cream. It will make you feel safe. And your brain always needs to feel safe. So when it comes to self-sabotage, when you have told your brain over and over again that you can't eat ice cream, you can't eat ice cream, you can't eat ice cream, you can't eat ice cream because you're on a diet and you have to lose weight and all of those things, and eventually you get to a point where you sabotage your success. Hear me when I say this. You are not sabotaging anything. You are seeking your source of safety. It's not the healthiest source. It's not the one you want to choose, but that's what is going on. Because your brain has survived X amount of days, weeks, months without the thing, and it needs to get the thing. Whether it's a chocolate bar or an ice cream, whatever, or anything, whatever it is for you. For me, it's chocolate. I love chocolate. I'm a big sugar sweets person. So, but that's what's going on. So part of the reason that I need to address this is because part of the problem is that you're compulsively eating food you don't want to eat, okay? That is part of the problem. I get that. But arguably, a bigger part of the problem is that you blame yourself for then sabotaging your success. That's not actually true. That's not actually what's going on. For example, when I talk about this in my speeches, I refer to two of my clients who, one, started gaining a lot of weight and realized when I asked him, when did your weight gain start? Right after 9/11, after 6 of his friends passed away, okay? So I'm going to stick with that example. This is not eating in response to appetite and hunger. This is eating in response to stress and trauma and other emotional issues. But so looking at that, you want to just understand the metaphor and the reality that we use food and sometimes obesity, and I'll get to that next, as a form of safety. So there is no self-sabotage. You're not sabotaging anything. You're actually doing exactly what your brain is designed to do. And if you go enough time without the thing that's going to make you feel safe, your brain will find a way to make it happen. This is not about willpower. This is not about control. This is not about discipline. You can try all of those things the way I'm sure you have before, and they'll work temporarily, but they will not work permanently, and they are not sustainable. Because if you're trying to use willpower and control and discipline, you are forcing your brain into a state of danger. You're not allowed to eat certain things. All your animal brain knows is that you're telling it can't have food. And food is how it survives. That's part of why that doesn't work. But I need you to understand, more than anything, that if self-sabotage is your biggest issue, you need to know that you're not sabotaging anything. You are seeking safety the way you are designed to. And then the question becomes, well, what do I do about it? How do I stop doing that? Well, you need to find things that are not food that bring your stress down. You need to find ways of coping with your emotions that are not eating and dieting and food and manipulating your body. That'll be another video. But this is explaining self-sabotage. So if we think about it in terms of like, why does everyone talk about self-sabotage so much? Well, if you look at it from, I don't know, the diet industry perspective, if they can convince you that you have a problem, that you are sabotaging your own success, and that all you need to do is try harder, you'll go back and try harder, and you will pay them more. That's kind of like how this works. You don't have a problem. You don't need that. It's a lie. It's just a straight up lie. It is a neurobiologically uninformed approach. And so that's why this is why I have to do this. The other thing that is related is, for example, okay, I have another client who, again, I use in some of my speeches as an example. He lost 130 pounds or so and then gained it all back plus some, which again is that is the only and correct physiological response to dieting, is gaining it back plus some, because your body is trying to protect you from starvation, and every time you go on a diet, your brain thinks you're in a famine. So it does you a favor. It protects you from the next famine you're going to go through by adding even more fat onto your body, okay? So we just have to understand all of this as it's really happening, not as the diet industry says it's happening. Okay, so he gains it all back plus some. And then I ask him how he feels. How do you feel when you have all this weight back on your body? And eventually, through conversation, he said, people really don't mess with me as much. So comfort and safety and protection is a benefit of obesity. When you're bigger, you are perceived as stronger or scarier or whatever it is. People don't mess with you as much. His words, not mine. So there are a few examples of people that I know that find a lot of safety in being bigger. John Gabriel, someone that I have worked with and looked up to, he talks about when he had a very abusive, toxic work partner at work who would just yell and scream at him. And John kept gaining more and more and more weight to the point where he said, then I would look at my coworker and I felt comforted by the fact that I could sit on him. I could literally just squash him because I was that big. So there is safety in obesity. There is comfort in obesity. And it works differently for everyone. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different relationship to their body. But I say this because if you get down to a certain weight and something if there was trauma, if there was abuse, if there was neglect, if there was some sort of stressor that happened to you at that previous weight, that's a reason for you to gain it all back. And not even that. There are reasons like when I lost all this weight and people started paying attention to me and seeing me and approaching me, things get scary when you're visible to people. And so again, this works differently for everyone. Everyone has a different relationship with it. But again, you're not self-sabotaging. You are finding safety. It just so happens that safety is either coming to you in the form of a chocolate bar or obesity or both. So either way, eating food and gaining weight is not sabotage, it is safety. You're finding safety. And again, I want to hear all your questions and I'm going to elaborate more about this. But the reason that this matters the most is because the last thing you want to do is beat yourself up and feel guilty and shameful for finding safety. Your brain doesn't give you a choice. You don't have an option. If your brain is feeling endangered, it will have to force you to either eat the food or gain the weight or both, because that's how you feel safe. And that's okay because we're designed to do that again. So that is how self-sabotage actually works and what it actually means. It's just your brain trying to protect you, and everything outside of your comfort zone literally is danger and threatening to your animal brain. So I hope this makes sense because I'm absolutely passionate about not only explaining why our bodies and our brains do what they do, but also to get us all on the same page, to get our mind, our body, our soul in alignment with each other. So we're not always gaining weight because our brain needs it and then beating up our bodies as a result of it. That's it. You've already tried that so many times. You already know it doesn't work. There is a better way. And part of that begins with understanding you're not sabotaging anything. And when someone needs safety and protection and comfort, they don't also need to be beat up for seeking out those things. If anything, they need to be loved and cared for and attended to and seen and heard. So that is how self-sabotage keeps coming into your life. Please comment, leave me your questions, leave me your thoughts, and any other topics that you want explained. I'm so happy to do this. Thank you for being here. Mwah.